Yvonne is finally here, and you're most likely trying to decide if you want to spend your hard-earned currency to obtain her. Well, in this video, I'm going to share my thoughts on the character so that you can decide if she's worth it or if you should skip her altogether. You'll get a look at her kit, gear, and some of the teams that I used when testing her out. As always, let me know in the comments if this video helped you decide, or you can just tell me who you're saving your currency for. Last but not least, this video is sponsored by Arknights Endfield, so I will not be telling you what to do with your currency. I'll be leaving the decision up to you. It's my job to share the information so that you can make a sound decision for your account. Without wasting any more time, let's get it poppin'. Alright guys, we finally reached the final boss of version 1.0. The final banner before we move on to the new hotness in version 1.1, all the content and characters that we haven't experienced in any previous beta. This is when the game is fresh and new moving forward. And you're probably wondering if it's worth spending your hard-earned currency on Yvonne, especially after we're about to move on to that new stuff. So I've been playing around with Yvonne and getting a hang of her for quite some time, trying to figure out which operators fully take advantage of her kit, how her kit works, which weapons can best cater to her specialty, and of course her gear set. Now her gear set, there's not many options because there's only one gear set that fully takes advantage of crit, and she is a crit hungry character. So let's go ahead and start from the top. Yvonne is a cryo elemental striker that focuses on single target damage but has some AoE capability within her kit. So we're going to go ahead and start talking about her abilities, and then I'll kind of feed into that as we go. All right, so let's focus on her battle skill first, because this is going to be the most important aspect of her entire kit, because it works kind of like a nice little rotation, right? So if you just use her battle skill, it's just going to inflict some cryo damage to the enemy. It's not how you want to do it. You need a nature character or a cryo character to fully take advantage of her battle skill. Preferably a cryo character, but you'll understand as we go on. If you inflict cryo or nature infliction onto the enemy, she'll consume those stacks and force solidification onto the enemy. And the damage dealt to the enemy after that, the cryo damage inflicted upon the characters, based on the stacks of cryo or nature that you have implemented onto the character. If the battle skill successfully forces solidify to the enemy, then you get some of that ultimate energy back so that you can prepare to utilize her ultimate ability. Now, this is where the rest of her kit kind of comes in, because her combo skill requires solidification in order to proc. All right, so if you have an enemy that's solidified and you do a final strike onto that enemy, then the combo skill will activate. Now basically what it does is it drops this drone on top of the enemy, and if there are multiple enemies there, it will try to pull in those enemies as well. And then eventually it will explode and deal cryo damage to those enemies. Now, once it explodes, she will apply solidification again and deal cryo damage to nearby enemies. So this is a really, really good ability that could create a nice little chain effect. Of course, the enemy that you've already solidified probably will not be solidified again right away, but the surrounding enemies, the other enemies that it pulls in, they will be solidified because that'll be their first time having solidification activate, and there will be no cooldown there. So after the combo skill successfully hits the enemy, she gains ultimate energy. Once again, helps with gaining her ultimate. And as for the ultimate, basically the way this works is you'll receive an enhanced basic attack. You'll see her pull out her guns, and as you're using the ability, she just consistently fires at the enemy. Now, what you don't see is her crit rate is consistently being enhanced. You'll receive a stack of more crit rate up until you reach max stats. And then when you reach max stats of crit rate, you'll start to see the crit damage begin to enhance as well. And once you reach the final strike, it'll deal massive cryo damage. Now, if the enemy is solidified for that final strike, Yvonne will perform an additional attack that will deal cryo damage and then consume the solidification. So the ultimate's a very, very strong attack. You want to make sure you have units that will debuff the enemy or buff you in some way so that you can fully take advantage of this. All right, so I've heard some of you loud and clear, and you want me to start talking about talents whenever speaking about characters. So we're going to take a brief moment to speak about the talents. Now, both of these talents are very, very helpful, but I honestly think the very first one is the most helpful, simply because of her combo skill. Now, her combo skill usually will force you to go through your entire basic attack chain in order to get to your final strike after solidifying an enemy. And in some cases, this could actually force you to lose your opportunity to get that final strike, only because some of these enemies in these games are very, very aggressive. So you could really quickly lose that opportunity to capitalize on a solidified enemy. However, this makes things a lot easier because after you apply solidification, your next basic attack goes right into being a final strike. And then after you max out the talent, it adds on plus 50% damage dealt as well. This is a very, very helpful talent, while the other one merely helps with the damage output. While that's great and all, this actually helps with the rotation of the kit. Now, Freezing Point, after adding Cryo Infliction to a character, the crit damage dealt is plus 20%, and it's doubled when you have a solidified enemy on top of it. So both of these talents, very, very helpful. Very, very good on Yvonne. All right, so for this weapon section, I'm going to be as quick as possible with this. I'm not going to waste any time because I have not done any math to go along with what I'm going to say. This is just based off of my own experience with each one of these weapons. Now, there are 3 of them here. Of course, RT Tyrannical is the signature weapon for Yvonne. This is the one that I highly recommend, but if you cannot go with RT Tyrannical, I had the best experience with Navigator. You can try all 3 if you have all 3, but Navigator was the one that I ended up being happy with when I was not using RT Tyrannical. I'm gonna go along with the skills. Of course, RT Tyrannical has intellect boost, crit rate boost, so both of these things are very helpful on Yvonne. And then Fracture RT Exaggeration. Cryo damage dealt plus 16% after the wielder scores a crit hit with a battle skill or combo skill, which happened very often with my current build. I'm about 43% into crit rate, so it happens very often. The wielder gains cryo damage dealt plus 14 for 30 seconds, max stacked for effects of the same name 3. Duration of the stack is counted separately. Effect only triggers once every 0.1 seconds. So as you can see, busted. Really, really helpful on her. She is someone who works off of crit rate and, of course, cryo damage. Now, the Navigator is also one that's going to happen very, very often. Intellect boost, cryo damage boost, both something that helps out with Yvonne's kit. But Infliction, Lone, and Distance Sail. Crit rate plus 3.5% when solidification or corrosion is applied to enemies. Once again, if you have the proper teams, this happens very often, is applied to enemies. The wielder gains cryo damage dealt and nature damage dealt plus 3.5% and crit rate plus 2% for 15 seconds. If this effect is triggered by the wielder, double the increased gain. Now, solidification is going to happen because of the wielder, because you're going to be forcing solidification with her own abilities, especially her battle skill. All right, now her combo skill is going to work off of you doing these things. You should understand how that works by now. But yes, this is going to happen very often. Even though corrosion isn't going to be happening from Yvonne, it does help out with this right here. It does give you that double increase. All right, so this one right here, Wedge, main attribute boost, which is going to be her intellect, crit rate boost, and then of course Infliction, Wedge of Civilization. Arts damage dealt plus 12%. When the wielder casts a battle skill, the wielder gains arts damage dealt plus 8% for 15 seconds. When the wielder's battle skill applies an arts reaction, the wielder gains arts damage dealt 16% for 15 seconds. Arts reaction is the key word, but once again, all 3 of these are very, very powerful on her. I just preferred Navigator because it appeared, without the math, to be the best performing out of these 2. If you can get the signature, go for the signature. All right, so Yvonne is a very strong character, without a doubt. However, she has a very strong reliance on other characters. For example, she needs cryo or nature infliction in order to start her rotations efficiently. Her battle skill relies on needing someone to have cryo infliction or to possibly get the most out of her ability, cryo or nature infliction. But if you have characters that could complement her kit well, then if you'd like to pull for her, she's a very good option for your team. But if you don't have many nature or cryo characters built, she's not going to be a good option for your teams. The one thing that I will say is that I do think that she is going to be a character that will be amplified in some way in the future. But with the current characters that we have, I can't recommend her in a way that would be beneficial for anyone's team. Once again, I don't tell you guys what to do with your currency. I'm going to be pulling for her personally because I have that strong feeling of her being very useful in the future. But besides that, it's all up to you. Spend your currency wisely. Version 1.1 is on the way, so keep that in mind. Anyways, you all have a wonderful day. Stay healthy, stay safe, stay chaotic. Love you guys. Peace out.